This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shin. It's hard to learn when you're hungry, when you don't know where you're getting your next meal. In 2020, nearly 4 million college students were facing food insecurity, according to a report by the Government Accountability Office. Today, many universities are working to help. Several colleges in Connecticut now have food pantries and programs working to address hunger on campus. But addressing campus hunger goes beyond giving out canned goods. It's about students assessing quality foods and addressing the root causes of food insecurity. Today, we talk about what this looks like. But first, we want to hear from students directly. Joining us now are two students from Southern Connecticut State University. Nelly Birmingham is a senior there, and Rakeria Thomas is a recent graduate about to start graduate studies at Southern. Nelly and Rakeria, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you, Catherine?
Doing great, of course. And for our listeners, let us know if you would like to share your own experiences. Are you a student facing food insecurity? Let us know, where do you find help? 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. So, Nelly, I want to start with you here. How did you first get connected to the food pantry?
Well, a little bit of my background story, how I got there, was that due to ongoing circumstances that were very emotional, harmful, and destabilizing on my house. So I took the necessary steps to remove myself from that environment in an emergency. So I got connected with the Support and Opportunity Center at school, and they provide me with so much. But yeah, I got connected that way.
And I mean, I imagine there's so many things going on at the time. You know, what was going through your head when you were going through that process and had to find a home and food among all that stress?
Well, as a Latina, asking for help doesn't come easy, right? Mm-hmm. So culturally, we are often think that we need to be strong. We need to survive on our own. So asking for help was very, very difficult. And admitting that I was struggling was something that it shakes the floor. It really, you rather to be skipping meals or not thinking about it and say, okay, to survive today, I just gonna divide my rationing, the food to go through the day. So yeah, it's fear, it's pride, is find the courage to find help.
Right, and there's so many different reasons and so many different experiences in terms of why somebody is at that point to need to ask for that help, right? And Rakeria, you have a different experience. You have been an active user of the food pantry as well, and you also interned there. Talk about what that has been like for you.
Yeah, so starting off at Southern in my freshman year, the spring semester, I gave birth to my son. I have a 3-year-old. So it was more so of trying to find a social balance as well as a mom balance and then a school balance. And within all of that, I had to figure out how I was going to, provide and sustain in society. And I was just chilling out in one of the offices on campus, and a student was talking about the food pantry. And I was like, food pantry? And they're like, yeah, we have a food pantry. So that's how I initially got started with the food pantry. I was blessed with the opportunity to intern alongside the Dean of Students with the Student Affairs Support and Opportunity Center, and we directly oversee the food pantry. So that was an interesting time because I was able to see the daily operations and what it takes to run a food pantry. So that was also interesting. Then being a user as well. So
right. And it sounds like both of you have different reasons for going there. And it's not like you have to explain why, really, per se. But I think there's a theme here where it came as a surprise to both of you that this was something that was available. And Rakeria, you kind of describe describing having to step out of your comfort zone. Can you talk about what that's like, having to get out of that comfort zone to ask for help?
Yes. So stepping out of my comfort zone, like, so for me having a 3-year-old, at the time, age of 19, not being able, or I guess the stigma of not being able to provide or support another human being so young,
Mm-hmm.
I had to get over the fear of getting weird looks, or not even weird looks, just judgment of, having to access these certain resources. So stepping out of my comfort zone looked like me putting my pride aside and saying, "Hey, I know I need to be sustainable, so my son is also stable." So I decided, I said, you know what? I said, it's okay. And you know what? What came from that was a lot of clarity, as well as I wasn't the only one,
Mm-hmm.
which is always something you do not think of when you're in a situation. You always think, oh, it's only me. And soon as you buckle down, I went, and when I was leaving, was seeing my friends leaving, and they're like, "Yeah, I know, I'm going to the food pantry," and I'm like, "Okay, I want to go with you." So it just made me more inclined and excited to go, and especially the options when I got there was really well. So
Right, and if unless you took the first step, you never would have known, right, that this
no,
is something
yeah.
that, yeah, that's available to everyone. And turns out a lot of more people than I think we think use this opportunity.
Mhm.
And Nelly, you mentioned
Yes.
something similar as well. Go for it.
So yeah, reaching out at my school and walking into the food pantry took a lot of courage, like I said before. And just like you said, it was a lot of background stories, and you are not dealing just with the insecurity and what is going to be when is going to be the next meal, but also reaching out school and recognizing that I needed help, and being like you said, I'm gonna be homeless. So what am I gonna do? Buy food, buy
Mm-hmm.
produce, or the only thing I can afford is going to McDonald's and get a $6 meal, right?
Right.
So and that should last for the entire day. So reaching out to the food pantry, it provide me not just with food, but they said, do you need forks, knives? Do you need gift cards that you can go to the local grocery and
Mm-hmm.
shop for something that makes you feel like you are being looking after, you being loved, you being seen, and they want you to succeed. And being able to concentrate in the classes and graduation day, so that really helps. It really changed. It changed my life. It was a turning point where, oh, I can trust people are there for me at advocating.
Right. And it's amazing that you were able to find that support system. And Rakeria, as you sort of learned about how there's a massive process behind how food pantries work, can you talk about how does a food pantry work on campus?
Yeah, so at first I think the big question is, what population are you serving? And thinking of all the cultural bases that go with it, as well as getting donations, having donors, and even just who's going to operate the food pantry, who's going to be there to make sure things go smoothly, and what rules are we going to set in place so that everybody has access to it. So when I started, well, even when I first started going to the food pantry, I never really thought of, like, when you're there, you're like, okay, what do I need?
Mm-hmm.
And like Nelly had said, it's not only just food that we offer. So we do have utensils, we do have forks, we have toothpaste, we have toothbrushes, deodorants, lotions. We have baby products. I remember I've went there and I've got pets stuff for my pets. So it's more so of thinking of what are you and who are you serving. You don't just want to reach a basis and say, you know what, if you have milk and you have bread and you have cheese and you have some type of canned vegetables, you're good. It goes deeper than that. A lot of people, if they can't afford to buy food for themselves, then what other things they cannot afford.
Mm.
I
And even, oh, Somebody want to say something? I'm sorry.
It's okay. Go for it. Finish your thought.
Oh, yeah. So just thinking about who you're serving and then how are you going to serve them, are the key components. And even with when we did mass grocery shopping hauls, thinking about what are the things that people actually need or what are foods that are going to last a long time. So instead of buying a box of frozen waffles, maybe we'll buy a box of pancake mix because you get a longer use out of it. So,
Nelly, did you want to respond to that as well?
Yeah, no, adding to that, building on that, I feel like when you go there, you are afraid to being judged, to all these stereotypes, then you can bump into, right? So being there and knowing that you are not gonna get looks, you are just gonna get, oh, do you need something else? So that kind of welcoming makes you feel better about that step forward than you have been taking.
I think the conversation or perspectives really change when people realize that it's more than just donating or grabbing a box of mac and cheese. It's more than just a literal food on the shelves. I think I'm going to pose this question to both of you. Let's start with Nelly first here. Do you feel people are surprised when they hear about food insecurity amongst college students?
Wow, yes. When I start going to the food pantry and I express that to my inner circle, I heard stories where even athletes they don't have access to that because they have to train, they have to go to school, and also they have to provide for themselves. So when they don't have the chance to go and look for a job because they have to have these long journeys, right? So classmates where mom and dad had been deported and they want to finish school and concentrate in at the education and goals, it is a struggle. So you get surprised where people then you see, oh my God, you really? And you are like, I should be more supportive, you never know who is next to you, and keep supporting when we can the food pantries and seeing that it goes further, that just one can, like you said.
Right. And Rakeria, do you have experience where people are surprised when they hear that this is something that exists amongst college students?
Yeah, so there's a hype around the fact that since you go to college and there's meal plans and there's always places on campus for you to dine, that typically students at this age don't deal with these struggles. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of that population could just be from commuter students. So if you are a commuter student, you're not necessarily sleeping here, you're not eating here, you come for classes, and typically commuter students, they have like little snacks in their bag, they pack a lunch. So I do hear that it's a shock to most people. And I just want to say that donating to food pantries not only, help the people who need it, but also bring awareness to multiple different demographics that have these issues.
And you're also an incoming graduate student. Does that change your
Yes.
perspective on that, or in terms of there's an emphasis on needing to spread awareness that this is actually something that's available to your fellow undergrad and graduate students?
Yeah. So as a graduate student, I also still have access to the food pantry, and I think it makes more of an effect, especially coming from my standpoint of view. I can't speak for everybody, but I know that I also am a mom and I am starting grad school, and the program that I'm in, it's shaped around working a full time. So if you're working a full time and you're going to school, and not everybody is blessed to have a substantial financial aid package or somebody to pay for their college. So if a lot of their money is going to, be able to sit in class and complete assignments, then what is that money taken away from? So even with undergrads, they, and especially being so young, you don't necessarily know how to navigate these situations. And it's important that we do have systems implemented for them just in case that, what, I don't know where to go. I'm hungry and I can't afford food for myself. What do I do? So having staff around to say, hey, come here and we'll figure it out for you is a blessing.
And Nelly, with your own experience here too, what do you think might be the biggest thing you've learned about food insecurity? And because of your own processes with this, does it give you that urge or desire to help your fellow classmates and let them know that this is something that, like, it's okay to go to a food pantry and grab what you need?
Yeah, absolutely. As a social work student, absolutely, that encouraged me to advocate and pass down the information, right? And tell people that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to accept support. It's okay that it doesn't make you weak. And when I mentioned to many other of my classmates, or when we have time off and we share with others, I never miss the opportunity to let them know, because you never know. You see people, then maybe some said, "Oh, let's go to get a coffee," and they said, "Oh, no, 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 I will stay behind," and you're, "No, no, we all pull in and get everybody." So identifying those things and being able to put your eye, and you need to help, you need to advocate, even it doesn't have to be financially. It has to be just bringing support and awareness.
And Rakeria, to finish off our conversation here, sort of building off what Nelly just shared, have you had conversation with any of your peers about the food pantry? I mean, I know you have, but just to let them know that it's there and there's no shame in asking for help, and that to have that support system will be so helpful for everyone's academic career.
Yes. So, as recently stated, I did intern with the Student Affairs Support Opportunity Center, and my key role there was to do case management. So, doing case management, I came across students who, kind of brushed it off, saying, like, oh, I'll, like, figure it out or something like that. Um, and I try to tell them that the food pantry is always there. No fear of judgment. If you need to go, you need to go, especially as another strategy for students who aren't necessarily dealing with food insecurity, but are dealing with a bigger issue that could potentially affect their ability to sustain healthy foods. So I always told them, I'm like, even if, you don't think you need it right now, you go into the food pantry and getting basic items alleviates the stress of your grocery bill at the end of the week or the end of the month. So extra money that you could have put that you would have put to food, you can put to, like, I don't know, your college bill, or buying textbooks. But I've always encouraged students to go, and even my friends, like, even if you're not going in there, you don't need a lot right now. Even if you're just going in there, I don't have lunch for today, I'm going to go into the food pantry and see if there is something in there. We normally have like microwavable meals and stuff like that. So always, always, always stress the fact that this food pantry is here for you. So if you're going to use it, because it's a lot of people don't have access to stuff like this. So it's a good thing.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. You've been listening to Rakeria Thomas, and Rakeria, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And you're also listening to Nelly Birmingham. Nelly, we also appreciate you sharing your experiences with us today.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
And coming up next, we hear from universities across the state about how they're addressing food insecurity on campus, and we want to hear from you. Let us know if food insecurity is something you experienced as a college student, and were you able to get help? 888-720-9677, or leave us a comment on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Today, we're talking about food insecurity on college campuses, who it affects, and how schools are trying to help. Caitlin Caspi is the Director of Food Security Initiatives at the Rudd Center for Food Policy and Health. Caitlin, welcome to Where We Live today.
Thanks for having me.
And also with us is Haley Berliner. She's the Assistant Director of Sustainability at Trinity College and also works to run the food pantry on campus. Appreciate you coming on, Haley.
Thanks for having me too.
And for our listeners, let us know if you have any questions or if you would like to share your own experiences, 888-720-9677, or leave us a comment on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. So, Caitlin, we just heard from two students at Southern Connecticut State University who are users of their campus food pantry. Any thoughts or reactions to the conversation we just heard?
Yeah, I really want to thank Nelly and Rakeria for sharing their stories. I think it brings to light this issue of food insecurity that I think reflexively some people think is not really an issue, or maybe that it works differently than it does in other populations. But really fundamentally, food insecurity is about a lack of resources to have consistent access to food at all times. It's an economic issue, and it cuts across a lot of different adult populations.
Well, you kind of defined it already here, but I just wanted to re-ask the question because we have been talking about food insecurity, and it seems to be there's an obvious answer to this, but how do you define food insecurity?
Yeah, so I would distinguish it from something like hunger, which is really just a physiological sensation. We all experience hunger, but I think food insecurity is really more than just missing a meal because you slept in, or having just a temporary experience of hunger. This is really about often persistent or chronic issues of economic need or economic instability. It can go along with experiencing housing instability, not getting other basic needs met. But again, this is fundamentally a social and economic issue.
Well, and we're certainly no strangers to instability, as we've seen over the last couple of years in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on food insecurity in Connecticut and beyond. Can you talk about what you saw during that time?
Sure. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, there were a lot of threats to food security due to, everything we saw, business closures, mass job loss, school and daycare closures. So kids were home more and needed more food and extra care. We had food supply chain challenges, and all of this together posed a real challenge for people who might have been at the margins of food insecurity, or even people experiencing who had been pretty far away from food insecurity, experiencing for the first time that they couldn't meet their household food needs. So we had kind of a massive response, both by the charitable food system, so places like food banks and food pantries that were able to offer up extra food, sometimes with federal food supply, commodity foods that were coming in, and then you also had other types of government support that was offered to people to kind of try to mitigate a big rise in food insecurity. So things like expanded SNAP benefits or food stamp benefits, and other types of things, the economic impact payments or the stimulus checks, and other types of supports. And what we saw is that food insecurity stayed mostly level for the most of the pandemic, and that's kind of a tremendous achievement considering that it really it could have risen much more. But I think that we were able to kind of tamp down on some of that rise given all of the support in these various systems. It kind of speaks to the importance of these various supports, both at the government and charitable food systems.
Well, and of course, this is something that impacts a lot more of the broader population as well, not just specifically today we're talking to students in higher ed about food insecurity, but of course, this is something that impacts a lot of people beyond a college campus. But sort of coming back to that higher education angle here, because this is not typically a population we think about when we talk about food insecurity, but this is not a new issue at all. What are your thoughts in terms of, why are we talking about this today? Why is this coming up now?
Sure. I think there's just been a growing awareness that a lot of, the kind of profile that we think of when we think of a typical student, that they attend class full time, work part time, or not at all. Or they're completely reliant on their parents for financial support. That's actually the minority of college students currently, and we're getting more attention and more data around this, really suggesting that about 70% or more of students are only attending part-time, they're working full-time, they're financially independent from their parents, or they have dependent children. They might be somewhat older, so they're not what we think of as students who are just dependent on their parents. And then at the same time, the cost of attending colleges has gone up. This is something we've been talking about for decades, and yet the problem is not being curbed. Over decades, the cost of tuition has really been outpacing inflation. And then compounding that, you also have other costs of attendance that include housing and meal plans and books. And, so the combination of the cost of tuition and these other costs are making it increasingly less affordable. So these two issues of kind of the socioeconomic diversity of students and then the real costs of college going up, I think are making this issue much more salient and under discussion.
Well, I think just based on what you said, there's so much more to this than just food insecurity, but so many elements that leads up to that challenge. And to get another perspective, ahead of this hour, we spoke with Central Connecticut State University President Zuma Turl, and here's what she said about their food pantry on their campus.
This is one of the basic needs of our students. If they don't have food to eat, then how are we going to ask them to perform academically? And given, if you are familiar with the demographics of the region where we are located, you will understand that this is a need. We remodel the place in such a way that is very much a space that was designed and created for a food pantry. It looks like a supermarket, if you will. And so, and we have a student who is always there, or somebody always there, like a receptionist, and to support the students. But the students can go there, and it's a self-serving environment. I think that sense of belonging, of supporting the students, is what students feel when they go to this place. I wanted the place to be welcoming, but also for students to feel this is part of of life, and I am being helped now, then I should be able to help people and give back. That's the mindset we're trying to develop in the students.
And Haley Berliner is the Assistant Director of Sustainability at Trinity College. Haley, I want to bring you into the conversation because you work to run the food pantry on Trinity College's campuses. And I think based on what President Toro just shared with us, it echoes a lot of the similar elements that our two students have mentioned earlier too, sort of the welcoming environment, the support that they got for each other, and of course the literal products that they can get at these food pantries. You know, how did the food pantry at Trinity get started?
Yeah, I had a student working with me in the summer of 2023. We are a relatively small campus. Not a ton of students are here for the summer, usually just a few hundred, and none of the dining facilities are open. And she was mentioning to me how challenging it was for her and a lot of her friends on campus to be able to eat. We're also located in Hartford, which is a food desert. So getting to grocery stores and getting real and nutritious foods is challenging. So once she mentioned that to me, we started brainstorming on how we could create a food pantry. And by Thanksgiving break of that year, we were up and running. Wanted to make sure we could support the students as best we could. And it's only been, a year and a half or so. So we're still kind of figuring it out, still learning and growing. But I think it's been a huge help to a lot of students here at Trinity.
Well, then you mentioned, because I think this is not unique to Trinity's campus, but amongst a lot of college campuses where, sure, if you're on a meal plan, you have the dining hall facilities, you can use it throughout the year. But I think oftentimes we forget that they're shut down during the holidays or during a long summer vacation. And I think Trinity's food pantry is unique in the sense that it sounds like it's mostly open during certain times of the year. So as you're trying to work those kinks out, what does that look like so far? How are you able to operate during those more sort of specific times?
It's been interesting. It's definitely still a learning process, but we are technically open always. It's during the academic year. Our students, most of them are on an all-access meal plan, meaning they can go in and out of the dining facilities as many times as they want, and they're open most of the day. So we usually just have more snacks and ramen and mac and cheese type foods in there during the academic year. And then anytime classes aren't in session, whether that's, Thanksgiving, winter break, spring break, summer, whatever, we are more of a full food pantry. So that's when we also have the produce and all of the refrigerated stuff, a lot of the things that everyone else has been mentioning this whole time. And, we've
tease the idea of having more of that during the school year, but then it doesn't get used as well. We don't want to waste any food either. We also want to make sure we're using our funding, our relatively limited funding, as well as we can, as efficiently as possible. So, we're still figuring it out, but we're seeing food prices go up. We're seeing the number of students access the pantry go up. So that is in some ways great. We want to make sure people who need it are using it. And in some ways, where are we getting the money to keep this stocked?
Right.
So we're really trying to figure out all of the
Right.
math there. So.
Yeah, that's a lot of math to do, and it sounds like so you are hoping to perhaps expand the food pantry so it's available more.
Potentially, we're moving into a bigger space later this summer, so we have the capacity for more food. So it's a little bit roomier and easier for more than one or two people to be in there at a time because it's a relatively small space right now. And with that, we're hoping we can also then expand our offerings at some point and what we have during those academic times as well.
Right, and you also mentioned that you're seeing more students who need access to it. Can you talk about the students that are remaining on campus? What does this population look like?
Really depends. I mean, this summer, unfortunately, with travel bans and political situations right now, there are a lot of international students on campus. The students who tend to stay for things like winter break or Thanksgiving tend to be the ones that live farther away internationally or even across the country, and maybe it doesn't make sense to go home for those times. But we also have students who are here for the summer to do research, and maybe they live 30 minutes away, but they want to do research on campus. So it really depends, but there is a large international student population at Trinity, and we definitely see them being maybe the most vocal about the pantry, which has been really great. I'm always looking for feedback, and I want to make sure I can provide the foods from all these different cultures and make sure everyone's getting, what they're looking for and what they want to eat.
Well, and Caitlin also would love to know what the food pantry looks like at UConn. It sounds like there's one available at almost every campus, I think.
Yeah, this is relatively new in the last 2 or 3 years. The Husky Harvest food pantries now operate on all of the UConn campuses, all the regional campuses, including the law school and UConn Health. And I think this is really important because UConn does a survey. They're kind of required by the state to do surveys as are all institutes of higher ed, to monitor food insecurity ever since 2022. And what we can understand from the data is that students on regional campuses are facing food insecurity at considerably higher rates. And there's also disparities by race, ethnicity. And so to kind of understand the differences across campuses and be able to serve students better, each campus has a unique set of resources. And I think those are growing resources. So not only are there food pantries, but there's also, there's a mobile food pantry near the Waterbury campus. There's other on-site options for discounted cafes or discounted food purchasing. Other food distribution efforts, like on the Hartford campus, they have a kind of produce distribution day, and I think that's kind of in the central area of the campus rather than tucked away in the food pantry, so that more students encounter it. So I think again the resources are growing all over these regional campuses at UConn, and look different across campuses.
Well, I think it's pretty amazing that you're able to sort of make it unique per campus, since every campus has a different need. But of course, we have to talk about funding here, as we need resources to provide those resources, right? And Caitlin, we're seeing federal funding cuts happening across the board. The Senate version's Big Beautiful Bill could include some of those larger cuts to social safety net programs, including SNAP, which we've been talking about. And this is all based on reporting according to the Washington Post and the Center for American Progress. So here's a big question here in terms of funding. If we do see cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or also known as SNAP, how would that impact food banks at these colleges and beyond?
Gosh, so this is really a salient question right now for this bill that's under consideration. So if we First of all, like these snap cuts are really kind of unprecedented. What they're proposing is that kind of for the first time, states would be required to pay a portion of food stamp benefits, and that means that in order to balance their budgets, they might be forced to kind of drop a sizable portion of their caseload. In Connecticut, that might be anywhere in the ballpark. I think it's been estimated of like 50 million to 100 million or more. And that means there's going to be cuts to outreach and greater barriers for signing people up or maintaining SNAP benefits. And so in order to fill this gap, we have a charitable food system. We have these food banks and food pantries that supply food, but they can only go so far. So not only is the need going to be greater, but we're also seeing that some of the changes in federal policy are affecting the food supply in the charitable food system. So we're seeing cuts to programs like the local food purchasing assistance program and the emergency food assistance program that supply the food. So we've got this kind of double whammy here of not only a threat to the safety net, but also a threat to the food supply.
Well, and then kind of rolling off with what you just shared, because a lot of these programs are based off or run off of donations. And with everything that's going on, would they be able to handle a larger demand of users, or is that something that you're all working on right now?
I think this is an enormous issue for food pantries right now. I mean, when I'm talking to food bank partners and food pantry partners, this is really top of mind. How are we going to be able to continue to provide enough food to meet the needs? I think that we're going to see food insecurity rates rise if, these policies go into effect, because again, there's a gap that needs to be filled somewhere, and if it's not filled in the safety net, where is it going to be filled?
Well, and Haley, I wanted to finish the conversation here with you. I know you touched on hoping to expand the food pantry on Trinity's campus, hopefully in the near future, but of course, with a need for more funding and more resources to provide that for students. And is this something that you're actively thinking about, or you're having these conversations with local food banks to see how you can maybe fill those gaps or handle that larger demand of users?
Yeah, when we first created the pantry, we had reached out to Connecticut Food Share and Midwest Food Bank trying to become, a member food pantry. And at the time, we were a little bit too small and they were a little overrun with locations in Hartford. And so we haven't gone back yet, but we were hoping once we have that bigger space and a little bit more of a setup, we could ask for that assistance again. But, with everything Caitlin was just saying and kind of my own anecdotal observations, that I'm not super confident that they'll be able to take on an additional food pantry. I mean, we'd love it, obviously, but we understand the need, and hopefully they can still manage all the pantries they already have.
With us this hour to talk about food insecurity is Caitlin Caspi, who's the Director of Food Security Initiatives at the Rudd Center for Food Policy and Health at the University of Connecticut, and also Haley Berliner, who's a Sustainability Coordinator at Trinity College and works to run the food pantry on campus. Got a question about food insecurity, or if it's something you experienced as a college student and would like to share, let us know, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Food insecurity impacts 1 in 5 college students. That's according to the Government Accountability Office. And today, we're hearing how campuses around our state are working to address it. Still with us is Caitlin Caspi with UConn and Haley Berliner at Trinity College. So, Caitlin, we've been talking a lot about what happens when you go through food insecurity, which can have long-term health consequences. What does this look like among students?
Yeah, so we know that food insecurity broadly is associated with a range of poor health outcomes, both poor mental health outcomes, like depression, and also it raises chronic disease risk. So, in the adult population, we see, it associated with outcomes like diabetes and obesity. And I think there's particular issues and outcomes that we need to consider in the student population as well. So, it's associated with greater stress and academic performance and graduation rates, and those are things that as educators, are kind of that they're our purpose, right? And if we can't get students through because their basic needs are being threatened, then that's something that as a campus and as a community we really need to pay attention to. This is something we learned long ago in the elementary school setting, right? So we feed kids. We've got a robust school meals program that serves breakfast and lunch for students K through 12. And so the reason we do that is because we know that food insecurity and having enough food is essential for academic performance and social outcomes. It's kind of works the same way throughout the life course.
And are these health conversations something that you're actively having with students, and what are you hearing from that population?
I think that when students are talking about this, I think we heard this from students at the top of the hour that the ways in which it's likely to affect their academic performance are really profound. I mean, if people are worrying about their basic needs, it causes a level of stress and is, of course, going to interfere with their ability to get their schoolwork done. I think students are balancing so much. We heard that
Right.
from the students on the show. They're balancing jobs, they're balancing, family responsibilities, childcare, and with all of this to balance, that not getting your basic food needs met is going to be a primary stressor that needs to come first.
Right. And Haley, we know when it comes to food insecurity and giving students access to affordable food, we're also talking about giving access to nutritious foods. What does this look like in Trinity's food pantry?
We've put a strong emphasis, especially recently, on as much fresh produce, as much variety in that produce as we can. We have increased our fridge capacity so we can provide more yogurt, cheese, additional veggies, more vegetarian options, like we have tofu and hummus and things like that. Trying to make sure that the kind of everyone in college lives off of ramen thing doesn't
Right.
have to be true. We do offer ramen if you want it, but like we want to make sure that you can, especially if you're here for the entirety of the summer, you can cook nutritious meals for yourself regularly, and also kind of learn that skill of, how do I cook for myself once I'm out of college.
Right.
Having a meal plan is not a thing once you graduate. So
sometimes I wish it still exists. And I mean, with that in mind, talking about having nutritious foods available for students, or produce, as you say, are you hearing from students who want those foods or want that produce available to them?
Absolutely. One of the things that we see fly off the shelves the fastest is tomatoes. And I have a student working with me this summer to help restock, and she's been keeping inventory, or like telling me what I need to buy. And the number one thing is always all the produce. It's oranges, limes, peppers, carrots. Like the number of produce options we have this summer is way higher than it was even last summer, because we just keep hearing more and more feedback from students that is what they want. I think they're sick of the mac and cheese and things like that, and they want whatever fresh food they can get.
Oh, and Caitlin, would love your thoughts on this as well, because this kind of goes beyond just providing education about nutrition. It's actually having the nutritious foods available for the students, and maybe for them to take it beyond the meals they can sort of cook for themselves. Is that something that you're seeing at UConn, or something that you're thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of conversations about how to offer a greater variety of healthy foods, and also to make the healthy choice the easy choice for students, and then across charitable food systems, right? So I've been doing quite a bit of work with food pantries in Connecticut and other states in, making food pantries a more welcoming place. There's no reason it has to be a stigmatizing experience, as we heard from the students at the top of the hour. This can be an experience where people walk in and feel like they're more like at a grocery store, and they're picking out items that are appropriate for their culture, that they know how to cook with, and that they can get adequate nutrition from. So, we are, having conversations about sourcing, both from kind of food banks, but then also donations. And I think, as people who might donate to a food pantry during periods of food drives, can think about what food might be most needed, right? Like, we can all go through our pantries and maybe donate, the mac and cheese or the ramen, but, we can also think more creatively about things that could be shelf stable, like cooking or baking items that could also go on the shelf and really serve students and offer more variety for them in these food pantries.
You sort of read my mind on what I was going to ask you, if there's a brief list of things that people can think about to donate, because I know there are some that are better than others. You mentioned a couple. Anything else that you would like to add to that list?
Well, what I'd like to add actually is that, any list that I come up with is not going to be as good as a list that clients and people using a food pantry themselves can think of. So what we actually have at the Red Center is a tool, kind of a guide for procuring culturally connected foods and the foods that people really want. They might be some specialty items. I know that food pantries have really limited budgets a lot of the time, but that means that they have to maybe make some trade-offs and make sure that what they are procuring is really meeting the needs and preferences of their clientele. So if you look on our website, we've got some resources and tools for surveying and asking questions to really hone in on what the specific needs and the best way to meet the needs of clients are.
And Haley, I want to ask you to expand on that. I know earlier you mentioned a lot of produce that students are asking. Anything else you want to add to that?
I think those are the main things. We've had some asks for, sauces and toppings, like seasonings and stuff from all different cultures, as opposed to sticking with, basil and cinnamon. Let's make it a little bit more interesting so we can cook way more cuisines. But yeah, it's mostly like they really want fresh food, which I respect a lot.
Well, and Caitlin, we got about a minute here, but I still want to ask, you took us back to some education starting from elementary school and providing nutritious foods there, but there is definitely a bigger systemic issue that leads to food insecurity. How do we address that?
Yeah, I think it's partly about supporting our food pantries, and I love seeing the growing resources for students on campus and on, college campus communities. But I think that it's got to go beyond that. I think the policy solutions are kind of at a higher level, and they include kind of preventing cuts to the SNAP program, making it easier for students to be eligible or sign up or not get kicked off. And then also efforts to make college more affordable. So, not cutting Pell Grants and, making sure that the cost of college and higher education is affordable for students. And this includes, affordable housing options. So there's really, it's not just going to be one initiative or one effort. It's going to really cut across a whole bunch of policy domains. And I think that's the best way that we're going to address this issue among students.
Well, thank you so much for breaking that all down for us to understand this issue better. I want to thank Caitlin Caspi, who's the Director of Food Security Initiatives at the Rudd Center for Food Policy and Health at the University of Connecticut. Caitlin, we appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me.
And also Haley Berliner, who's the Assistant Director of Sustainability at Trinity College. Haley, thank you so much for being on as well.
Thank you.
I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Tess Terrible and Isaac Moss. Our technical producer is Jean Amatruda. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. And thank you all so much for listening.